Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. And I'd just like to begin by acknowledging my gratitude for the opportunity to meet on the Treaty 13 lands of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation and reaffirm the Ontario Green Party's commitment to the truth and reconciliation process. I'm honored today to be joined by Martin Strathoff, the Executive Director of Ontario Farmland Trust, and Sunil Puri, a farmer and chair of the National Farmer Union Ontario Farmland Committee. I think it is so important for us and for me to stand alongside these two voices, people who have been fighting to protect farmland that feeds us for years. We are seeing an unprecedented loss of farmland in Ontario right now. According to the Ontario Farmland Trust, almost 320 acres of farmland is lost in Ontario each and every day. And now through Bills 23 and 39 and the accompanying proposed regulations that would open the Greenbelt for development and the building of Highway 413 and the Bradford Bypass, we're about to see a significant increase in the loss of farmland in Ontario. This threatens our food security and our farming economy. I have particular concerns about the loss of the Dauphin Rouge Agricultural Preserve, which is Class 1 and 2 prime farmland and specialty cropland that will be lost if Bill 39 passes this week. And we've most recently learned that by removing these lands from the Greenbelt, the Ford government will not only be in contravention of an agreement with the federal government about consultation on any boundary changes related to these lands, but also verbal agreements with the federal government to transfer some of these lands to the federal government to enhance the protections of the Rouge National Park. Right now, as we speak, thousands of people in communities across Ontario have been organizing rallies, calling on Premier Ford to keep his promise to not touch the Greenbelt. This past weekend, I participated in many of those rallies, and my favorite chant was, "No to housing in the Greenbelt, yes to housing in my backyard." Because we know from the government's own hand-picked Housing Affordability Task Force that we have sufficient land already approved for development outside of the Greenbelt. There is no need to develop the Greenbelt in order to meet the need to build 1.5 million homes in this province. People are speaking up. Farmers are speaking up. Housing experts are speaking up. And they are all saying that we cannot pave over the farmland that feeds us, the nature that protects us from extreme weather events and cleans our drinking water. So now I'd like to turn it over to Martin Strathoff, the Executive Director of the Ontario Farmland Trust. Martin comes from a farming background and most recently worked in agricultural land planning policy for Halton Region and is working towards his master's degree in rural planning and development at the great University of Guelph. Martin, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Mike. So first, I want to start off by saying that Bill 39 and repealing the Dauphin Rouge Agricultural Preserve would be a regression to our community planning practices and would lead to what we know are ill-advised planning decisions that would negatively impact some of our best farmland, cutting away at one of the most important sectors of our economy and provides us with our food and many ecological services. These lands were first expropriated from farm families in the 1970s under the pretense that they were needed for an airport. It took decades to realize that expropriating these lands was a mistake, and so they were intended to be returned back to the agricultural community with conservation easements on them to help ensure they remain in agriculture, because the decision makers then knew what we are trying to share today, that these lands need to be protected. So much so that really there are three levels of protection on these lands. There's the conservation easements, there's the legislation to protect those easements, and they are included within the Greenbelt. lands that have 3 layers of protection should not be so easily trifled with. We have many other paths that we could take for urban planning and development instead of allowing urban sprawl to take place. Our provincial food production has limited supply of land that has the necessary qualities to produce food, such as soil quality, water quality, and a very specific climate. And these are not so easily moved to elsewhere in Ontario. And now we could see today's government intentionally strip away each of those protections by repealing the Dauphin Rouge Agricultural Preserve Act and make an irreversible mistake of paving over our prime food-producing landscape. We should be concerned about how this is going to affect Ontario's resiliency now and in the very near future. Agricultural land is already very expensive, making it difficult to make the necessary margins needed to remain viable in this seemingly ever-challenging economy. Our food production sector needs to see a government supporting them. Instead, by repealing the Dauphin Rouge Agricultural Preserve, the government is signaling to land speculators that any farmland in this province can be seen as fair game. This will lead to further increases in farmland prices, threatening the viability of the agricultural sector even further. We need to be thinking about how we can be keeping land affordable for agriculture and how to house our population, not just one or the other. In 2005, when the government sold the land back to the agriculture community, they did so at a discounted rate of about $7,000 per acre because there was public interest in those lands, and those interests were being protected by the easements. Think of that as a public investment. The value of that public investment is now worth hundreds of millions of dollars, if not more, and is now being given to developers. It's not just that these farmland itself will be affected. The agricultural system of food production is very complex and interconnected. The fragmentation that we can expect by the passing of Bill 39 will negatively impact the agriculture in the region and beyond. This is why something like the Greenbelt was created in the first place. This is why these lands have so many levels of protection. And this is why the Greenbelt needs to be expanded and why trading land for new land 100 kilometers away isn't good enough. This is not the intention of the Greenbelt, and this isn't how agricultural systems work. We need our elected officials to know this about the very foundation of our agricultural sector. Maybe then we can stop farmland loss. We've already lost 20% of our farmland in Ontario in the last 35 years. So how much more are we willing to lose? The Ontario Farmland Trust is urging the public to reach out to your MPPs and let them know your concerns and help us educate these MPPs as well. Our organization is so thankful for the supporters and partners who have been working tirelessly to raise awareness on this issue, and to them I say thank you. The Ontario Farmland Trust is with you, and we will continue to work on protecting farmland in the province for today and for future generations. Thank you very much, Mike.
Thank you, Martin, and thank you for the great work that the Ontario Farmland Trust does. Now I'd like to introduce Sunil. Sunil is a farmer growing produce and livestock in the Hamilton area. Sunil is president of the National Farmers Union Ontario Local 351 in Hamilton, Halton, and Brant, and chairs the National Farmers Union Ontario Farmland Committee. Sunil, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you both to Mike and Martin for those spot-on words. The NFUO is categorically opposed to Bill 23 and the Ontario government's proposals to alter the Greenbelt's boundaries and remove 7,400 acres of permanently protected agricultural and natural heritage lands. The government is proposing to grow Ontario with a new provincial agri-food strategy while deregulating 5,000 plus acres of protected farmland that we need to feed Ontarians. There is no growing Ontario without permanent protections for farmland in the province. The NFUO has long championed the need to grow, not carve up, the Greenbelt. We supported the proposed Bluebelt expansion area, which would extend protection to areas of high ecological and hydrological value, such as moraines, wetlands, headwater areas, and cold water streams. We also participated in 2017 and 2021 when the Ontario government sought feedback on ways to grow the size of the Greenbelt. This government has gone from proposing Greenbelt growth to sowing the seeds of its destruction. Solving the housing crisis does not require the removal of finite, irreplaceable, and invaluable agricultural and natural heritage lands. We understand and agree with the need to build affordable, missing middle housing, but let's do it where people already live and work and leave the farmland to feed our growing population. The 4,700 acres of prime farmland in the Dauphin's Rouge Agricultural Preserve has the potential to produce local food for the diverse GTA communities. Instead, this proposal earmarks it for urban sprawl. The redesignation and removal of specialty crop and natural heritage land in the Niagara region is extremely misguided. The removal of these lands from the Greenbelt protection threatens a cornerstone of Ontario agricultural diversity, and removes an extremely rare land base for specialty crop production. The economic impact of the past 2 years has taught us the importance of investing in resilient, localized supply chains that will keep food on the shelves and in our province. The loss of farmland, especially near our most populated urban areas, directly undermines the ability of Ontario farmers to grow food, threatening our food security and our $47 billion agri-food sector. By signaling that no land within the Greenbelt is permanently protected, this government is supporting speculators and developers as they hedge their bets and buy up Greenbelt farmland, effectively preventing the next generation of farmers from being able to afford their own land. At a time when the average Ontario farmer is at or past retirement age, we need a government that is willing to find solutions to the problem of farmland affordability. Instead of carving up and selling off the Greenbelt, we need legislation to prevent farmland grabbing and speculators in order to keep farmland in the hands of farmers. We believe Ontarians want their government to develop a responsible path forward that solves the housing crisis in a way that is affordable, ecologically sustainable, democratically informed, and that protects all farmland and natural heritage lands now and for the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Sunil, and thank you to the National Farmers Union for your work on this issue. And thank both of you for highlighting something I think that hasn't been highlighted in much of the debate to this point, is how this move by the government is going to increase land speculation and therefore make it even harder for farming to be affordable, especially when it comes to land acquisition for new farmers.